Look at all these statues. They look old, like they've been here centuries. Who is this supposed to be? She looks like a warrior queen, like Elstriel from Dad's book. She's missing her hand, though. Her weapon. It looks like it was broken off. Today on the Comic Book Report, The Autumn Kingdom, Volume 1 by Cullen Bunn and Christopher Mitten from Oni Press. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm happy to say we're back in the world of Oni Press, taking a look at a relatively recent release. This is The Autumn Kingdom. And I'll admit right from the jump, ever since I finished reading The Sixth Gun from Cullen Bunn, I have been devouring all material I can find by this incredible comic writer, and this was no exception. I had heard bits and pieces of people really enjoying this series as it was coming out in single issues. Quick shout out to Bunkmaster B. I know he was a really huge proponent of this release. And now that I've read it, I can absolutely echo his commendation. This was a really fun start to what I hope is a long and fruitful fantasy series. Now, before I dive into this collection, I would like to just say a huge thank you to those at Oni Press for sending over this review copy in exchange for review. And as always, I would like to shout out the channel sponsor, panelboundcomics.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I always encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link to them in the video description, and if you see anything site-wide you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you do use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's still the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now on with the show. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Cullen Bunn and illustrated by Christopher Mitten. The issues in this volume were published by Oni Press beginning in 2024. The volume itself collects The Autumn Kingdom, issues 1 through 4. And finally, this is a standard-size trade paperback collection with glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 104 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first dedicated look at the front cover for today's trade paperback collection, and I will say it is basically the reproduction of the issue 1's cover. We do have the creators up top there, the title going across it. We have some fall leaves with some glowing eyes coming out the back. At the bottom, though, we do have a volume 1 and the subtitle of the collection, Through the Blight. I thought that this was a really aptly named collection here, and I really like it. The Autumn Kingdom in general, I think, is a fantastic title that really screams about everything this book is. Now, along the spine, we do have the field of red retained from the red on the front cover, which I loved, and then we have the popping text being in a nice yellow color. We do have the Oni Press logo at the top. Along the middle, we have the Autumn Kingdom. We do have the last names of the creators there toward the bottom of the spine, Bunn and Mitten, and at the very bottom, we do have a black 1 indicating Volume 1, which makes me really eager to read more coming out in the future. Now, along the back of the collection, we do have some more of that fall foliage there, which I love to see. We have blurbs, a little reviews about the collection, and a synopsis. Toward the bottom, we do have pricing information and the Oni Press logo. I have to say the graphic design for this trade paperback is superb, and I love the way they laid out the back of this book. Absolutely striking, visually beautiful and inviting, and yeah, I just adore it. Great design work here from Oni Press. Okay, now that we finished our look at the exteriors, I did want to go ahead and transition to do a brief look at this book's binding for all of you prospective collectors out there. So as I mentioned at the top, this is a glued binding, which is about what I expect for trade paperback collections. And in my collection, I'm happy to say we have very minimal to no gutter loss. The pages all laid down for me fairly flat, and I have absolutely no complaints about the binding. Alright, now without further ado, we can dive into the collection proper. And after the title page, we do have some art, and then after that, we have another title page with the creators listed, followed by a kind of bibliography or publication information page, and then the first issue, which is given a chapter break, and a reproduction of the first issue cover. After that, we jump right into our adventure, and this is how the book is kind of mapped from here on. We basically have the first 4 issues of this run, we have the chapter breaks there, corresponding to each of the individual issues that were released, and we just go linearly through it. No real bells or whistles here, but I do like that we still got to see the covers, and we have a great sense of when these new issues start. And speaking of the start, let's go ahead and talk about the first issue in this collection. To set up a context, we basically follow a family of 4, a father, mother, and 2 young girls. Now these girls, actually I should say, are probably about teenage when the story is happening, and their father is a prominent fantasy fiction writer who is kind of going on a bit of a writing retreat with his family deep in this kind of forested wood area. They have sort of an Airbnb house rental kind of situation. But we have this narrative happening concurrently with what I believe to be snippets or excerpts from the dad's fantasy fiction series, which involve kind of races of high elves or fairies getting into all sorts of misadventures. There seems to be a struggle in power against a good sister and a bad sister. They're both kind of magic using warriors, and we have that just juxtaposed with the main narrative that follows this family. The lines between these two kind of disparate story or plot elements begin to blur a bit as we go further into the work, because we find that as this family is enjoying this kind of vacation of sorts in the woods, everything is not what it appears to be. In fact, we find that the woodland is kind of at the border of sort of a magical realm or world, and these kind of monstrous fairy creatures are breaking through. The girl's father and mother are kidnapped early on as monsters kind of break in and invade their space. The girls are displaced, although they do find a gigantic magical sword, and are taken in by neighbors who we come to find out are also kind of paying tribute to these evil magical creatures, or at least supposedly evil. The girls escape again with this magic sword that warns them of approaching danger in the form of these magical creatures, and the two of them basically fend for their lives, fighting and destroying what they need to in a quest to not only survive, but hopefully find their parents and to, again, try to basically liberate them from capture. What I really liked about this story, though, is the immersive art we get from Christopher Mitten in the deep kind of fantastical narrative spaces. It's absolutely beautiful, but even in the kind of burgeoning fantasy world of our main sisters in that family, it's just absolutely enchanting. I find it engrossing, absolutely immersive, and every page and every panel I am so gripped. The panel layout itself is exciting and interesting. We do have a lot of boxy rectangular paneling, but it's done in a very, very just engaged way. I don't know how else to say that. I'm really impressed with how the layout can feel so gripping, even with a lot of these boxes that are kind of traditional paneling. I also just love the written work here from Bunn. I think all the characters are certainly interesting, but it's really the world building that sells me on this entire project. Along these 4 issues, as I've mentioned, we basically get a lot of tension mounting as the girls try to survive and kind of try to find their way to their lost parents. They deal with ethical dilemmas in what happens when we kill these fairies, how can we do this, or what the heck's going on around us. The way they encounter not only human, but these kind of magical characters throughout I thought was engaging, and also all the cuts to the kind of fantastical written space that their father presented, and I even question the nature of the father's relationship to the fantasy genre. Is he aware that fairies and things are real? Is that something we're going to find out as this project goes deeper? It leaves me, again, just asking a lot of questions. I also wonder if there's a bit of foreshadowing between the kind of weird sibling dynamic we have in the fantasy writings and the sisters we have as our primary protagonists. Are they ultimately going to break bad and fight against each other? I don't know. Suffice to say, this work is really narratively ripe, and I find myself probably the target audience here. I am so engaged in this series. As we get to the final act of these 4 issues, we have the girls basically going into this kind of underground space. There's a king of the fairies that seems to be a bit down on his luck, we should say, and ultimately the girls find their way back to where their parents are held captive. They even have a really cool interaction with their mom, and I believe ultimately their dad is still captured, and they're trying to figure out where to go next. And then as a bit of a tag at the end of that narrative, we do have a bit of a flash over to the fantasy works side of it. Again, we have this kind of back and forth narrative between the two, and I like that we got a bit of a stinger there as well. Of course, there are some plot details and twists and turns that I've left out of this synopsis kind of review, but I'll leave that for readers to enjoy for themselves. But I think across these 4 issues, I was amazed at how much ground we were able to cover, how immersive, like I mentioned, this world appears to be, and I couldn't have been more delighted with the journey therein. At the back of the collection, we do have a bit about the creators themselves, which I like to see, followed by a bit of a cover art gallery. We have a couple other extras there, but that's really what you can expect for the Autumn Kingdom Volume 1. I think that this series has a lot of potential. I can't wait to hopefully read many, many more volumes in the near future. Again, like I said, I am newer to Cullen Bunn, but ever since I read and reviewed his work on The Sixth Gun, also for Oni Press, I've been a big fan, and I've just been trying to get a lot of his works that I can since that point. I will say, however, since reading Sixth Gun, this is probably my favorite work from Bunn I've encountered, and that's saying something. I'm really eager to see where the series goes from here, but I can say for a Volume 1, this one hit it out of the park for me. And again, this is the Autumn Kingdom Volume 1 through The Blight by Cullen Bunn and Christopher Mitten from Oni Press. And now, the grade. For this gripping and immersive fantasy epic, the Comic Book Report is happy to give The Autumn Kingdom, Volume 1 Through the Blight by Cullen Bunn and Christopher Mitten from Oni Press a B+. This was a fantastically engineered first volume of what I hope is a long and much beloved fantasy epic. I really can't say enough about this other than I just really thoroughly enjoyed it from issue 1 all the way through the end of issue 4. It absolutely left me wanting more, but I feel satisfied with this first arc as well. I would love to hear from any of those in the comments that have enjoyed the Autumn Kingdom thus far as well, or those that after hearing my review want to pick up a copy for themselves. I think that I've really become more of a fantasy fiction fan as I've grown older, and I think that this is a terrific start to another series. But again, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear some of yours in that comment section. Again, a huge thank you to those at Oni Press for sending over this review copy in exchange for review, and for all of you for taking the journey right along with me. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, those comments we talked about, and maybe check out another one of my videos on your way out. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.